To the left-hand side for Vieira, who'll play it through to Gabriel Jesus, who's in here for Arsenal. Gabriel Jesus to finish it off. Oh, what a way to do it! Gabriel Jesus seals the points for Arsenal. He's back, and he's back with a bang.
Into the penalty area it goes. Gabriel's header, and it's into the back of the net. Arsenal take an early lead through Gabriel.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the daily Arsenal podcast with me, Harry Symeou.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're good. Hope you're well. Welcome back to another live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. And on today's episode, we're going to be focusing on Mikel Merino. There was a report that came out shortly after we finished recording yesterday's episode from Miguel Delaney, which I think was trying to shed a bit of light on what the situation currently is. Why isn't this thing moving forward? Where are the snags? What are the problems? What are the issues? And we're going to go through that article on today's episode, and we're going to pick out the key points, and we're going to discuss them as we like to do here on the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. A big thank you to everybody that is with me live right now. A big thank you to everybody that will be watching this back. And of course, a huge, huge thank you to everybody that will be listening to this on the various audio platforms. Now, if you're an X user, we are running a competition at the moment. And I want to explain a little bit about that before we dive in to today's topic. And we're going to do it in detail. Don't worry about that. Bear with me. This is worth it. First of all, I'm going to tell you how you can win an Arsenal shirt. Then I'm going to tell you about what we've just dropped over on the Patreon side of things. That's really, really exciting. And then we're going to get into this Mikel Merino stuff. Don't worry, in a few minutes' time, we'll be knee-deep in Mikel Merino chat. But first of all, I do want to just let you guys know, those of you that haven't seen it on X, that we are running a competition at the moment. And the competition is something that I'm running to say a big thank you to you guys, really. That the Premier League season is just days away. And I wanted to say a big, big thank you to all our loyal listeners and viewers. As I've said before, look, I feel far more comfortable when I'm analyzing football games than when I am discussing transfer rumors, speculation, and all the rest of it. So I can't wait for the fact that the season is kicking off this weekend and we can get back to that. I put this in my post, so I'm going to kind of say it to you guys that are listening and watching as well. I was kind of worried going into the summer about how it would go. The Arsenal aren't in action. I always find summers a little bit daunting in terms of content because I don't really know what to talk about on a lot of days. And I'm sort of looking around and, reading stories and trying to figure out what would make a nice, compelling running order to keep you, the dear listeners, of course, engaged. But I should have known how amazing you guys are. And the fact that the podcast has continued to grow over the summer is just mind-blowing to me. We had more unique listeners in a month last month than ever before across Apple and Spotify. Now, people will tell you a download number, and we do in excess of 100,000 downloads a month, right, on audio, which is amazing when you think about it. But a lot of those downloads are attributed to the same people. So I think a better indication of how well or not well your podcast is doing is to kind of hone in on how many unique listeners you have. And we registered over 42,000 unique listeners last month on Apple and Spotify alone. Forget YouTube. YouTube doesn't even come into the equation here. YouTube is a whole different beast and a whole different animal. On the podcast front, we are flying, and I'm so, so grateful to those of you that have continued to support me over the summer. We've surpassed 35,000 subscribers here on YouTube as well, where you can, of course, get the shows in video format. And I've been blown away by how many of you have signed up as patrons as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This season, I promise you, is going to be bigger and better than ever before, with even more coverage and even more content. And so to say thank you for that support, I'm going to give away 3 home shirts. What you need to do to enter the competition is head over to X. This is only open to X users because I can't monitor this across multiple platforms. So if you want to just sign up to X, get yourself a free account just to enter, feel free to do so. What you need to do is follow us on X. and the handle is at TCOAG pod. You'll see it on the screen. Give us a follow. Repost the post that I've put out about the competition, which is on my personal page, but you can find it because it's been retweeted on TCOAG pod. And then comment below with the name of the player that you're tipping to be Arsenal's player of the year come the end of next season. So do that and you'll go into the hat, and I will pick 3 random winners and we'll announce those winners on the Arsenal versus Wolves preview podcast, which will be out on Friday morning. Do that and you'll be in the hat for your chance to win an Arsenal home shirt. I'll reach out to the winners, get your names and addresses, get your sizes, and I'll order them from Arsenal Direct to be delivered straight to you guys. So, please do get involved in that. Thank you so much for all your support. Just very, very quickly as well. In fact, you know what? I'll leave this bit till later. Let's dive into the Mikel Merino content because I know that lots of you will be waiting for that. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Lots and lots of good mornings and hellos. I'm not going to go through all of them because we'll be here all day. Steve says the normal Harry seems to have been replaced to the grumpy one from yesterday. Do you know what? When I finished recording yesterday's podcast, I did think to myself, was I a little bit too grumpy? Like, was I making a bigger deal out of something than I probably should have? And actually, I thought on my way to work, what I'm going to do, and I don't often listen to the pods back in full. I normally kind of skim through them once I upload them onto the audio platforms just to make sure that there are no issues with me kind of having taken the video file and turned it into an audio one. I just want to make sure that it's all, loaded up and fine. And so what I normally do is skim through. But yesterday I thought, was I a little bit OTT on the Nketiah stuff? And I listened to it back on my way to work, and I don't think I was. I stick by every single word that I said on that episode. I really, really do. Was I a little bit grumpy in my delivery? Maybe I was. But I stick by every single word that I said on that. And I'd be happy. I'd be happy to debate that with anyone that wants to have that debate, because I think it's a really good conversation and a really good chat to have. Big thank you to everybody else in the live chat as well. Guna Tom says, well deserved, Harry, quality content. Thank you so much. Nunandinho says, you have a right to have a day off, Harry. I'm not going to have a day off now. Not going to have a day off when the season's around the corner. No way. Matt says Steve is going to get banned for calling Harry grumpy. I don't even ban my biggest critics because I love the interaction. Don't worry. No one's getting banned. And definitely not Steve. He's a lovely man. No way. What else have we got? Tom says, I actually really enjoyed Harry's opinions yesterday. And no, you did not make more than was needed, Harry. Felt you were bang on, actually. Well, that makes me feel better that at least one person agrees with me. But anyway, thank you so much, mate. Right, let's dive into the content of today's episode. Then we're going to focus in on Mikel Merino. What on earth is going on with that? Are we going to see a conclusion to this anytime soon? We'll give you an update according to Miguel Delaney with regards to what exactly is happening here. Okay, so this piece literally dropped. If it dropped 23 hours ago, that means it dropped like an hour after we recorded yesterday's podcast, right? So as soon as I got on the train and opened up my phone and started scrolling through and having a look at what was happening on the world of X, I came across this and I thought, damn, I wish this dropped an hour earlier because we could have discussed it. But I'm glad that we got the Nketiah focus done because that needed to be said on my part anyway. But Miguel Delaney's written a really interesting piece in The Independent in which he talks about the Mikel Merino situation. And he says that the Gunners are 10 million euros away from La Real's asking price for the Spain international. So let's break it down a little bit more. He says Arsenal and Real Sociedad are still some way apart over the structure and amount of the deal on Mikel Merino's proposed transfer in a negotiation that could yet go until the end of the window. The Basque club have illustrated how tough they are to negotiate with through Liverpool's failed attempt to sign Martin Zubimendi, with their resilience only deepened by the idea that they could have lost three major Spain Euro 2024 winners, Zubimendi, Merino, and Atletico Madrid signing Robin Lenormand this summer. I'm going to just pause there because I don't agree with the whole Real Sociedad showed everybody that they can dig their heels in with the Martin Zubimendi thing, because yes, okay, they were able to convince him in the end to stay, but that isn't through their ability to kind of negotiate with other clubs. That was through their ability to negotiate with the player, but also there must have been a part of Martin Zubimendi that didn't want to go to Liverpool Football Club, that didn't want to leave San Sebastian, his home nation, all the rest of it. I think that Zubimendi, having rejected a number of clubs to date, is someone that really, really is in love with the idea of not just playing for Real Sociedad, but staying in San Sebastian as well. So I don't think that what happened with Zubimendi is similar to this. I don't think that the two are comparable, really. I understand kind of maybe why Miguel Delaney's gone down that route in terms of saying, well, La Real did dig in on Zubimendi because even when it looked like Liverpool were going to trigger his release clause, they were able to pull out all the stops behind the scenes and convince him that, no, you should stay. But I think these two situations are very, very different. Mikel Merino wants to go. He wants to join Arsenal. Martin Zubimendi must never have been totally convinced by the idea of Liverpool. Otherwise, he'd have signed for them, right? Taking it on a little bit further, Miguel Delaney says, while the feeling on Merino's side had been that Zubimendi staying could well aid his desire to move to Arsenal, there is still a long way to go in the deal. Real Sociedad are holding out for 35 million euros, which equates to 29.9 million pounds, since the 28-year-old's contract is up next year. While the midfielder wants to go and everything is seen as clear on his side, Arsenal have been enduring slow negotiations over both that price and also how much is paid over installments. The London club, who have been aiming to pay closer to 25 million euros, which translates to 21.3 million pounds due to Merino's contract, would prefer to spread any agreed valuation over 3 years. Real Sociedad want much more of the fee up front. So let's put a pause in it there. What do we know here? Real Sociedad's asking price is 29.9 million pounds. Arsenal are wanting to pay closer to 21.3 million pounds. So you're talking about a difference of 8.6 million pounds here between what Arsenal want to pay and what Real Sociedad want to get. Now, I would guess that by the time this window comes to its conclusion, Arsenal will have met Real Sociedad somewhere in the middle, and this deal will be done for a figure at around about 25 million pounds, which is around about 30 million euros. So I think we're going to meet in the middle somewhere. If you were asking me to predict how this is going to go, I think that's eventually where we end up. I think Real Sociedad are in a much different position to the one that they were in over Zubimendi. They've had the sort of the talk with the player, and the player's made it clear that he wants to go, which makes it much more difficult to convince someone to stay rather than someone who's kind of on the fence like Martin Zubimendi was throughout that entire process, contrary to what Liverpool fans will tell you. But also the contract situation puts La Real in a weak negotiating position. And I think that's what Arsenal have kind of seen and sensed. Arsenal have kind of smelt that there's a problem here. They've gone in, they've looked at the contract length and they've gone, well, you kind of need to take this or you're going to end up with significantly less, maybe in January, or in the worst case, you'll end up with nothing come the end of the 24-25 campaign. And we talked about it before. Clubs in Real Sociedad's position, they can't always afford to sort of dig their heels in those types of situations and risk walking away with nothing. So I started asking myself the question after I read this: is this a situation in which Arsenal just need to pay up and get on with it? I feel like 8 million is too much to just write off and say, well, we need to do this deal. It's imperative that we do it. And so whatever, like just give them what they want. I think 8 million is just too much for you to be able to do that and say that. If you're talking 2 or 3 million, I'd be sitting here saying, Arsenal, just do the bloody deal. But I was moaning yesterday about sort of the Eddie and Nketiah situation and the fact that we were really digging our heels in. And people will say, well, why were you saying that Arsenal should crumble, but now being totally understanding of Real Sociedad's situation here with regards to Mikel Merino? And the reason for that, guys, is because the situations are totally different. First of all, Mikel Merino wants to go and is actively saying that behind the scenes to try and make this deal happen. Number one. Number two, he's 28 years of age, which means that with every passing day, the valuation of Mikel Merino is dipping. Okay, that's the fact. 28 is not old. Okay, I'm how many years older than him? 6. I'm gonna be 34 on Friday, so I'm 6 years older than him, and I don't feel old. Well, sometimes I do, but that's not the point. The point I'm trying to make here is that at this point in his career, with that long left on his contract, Real Sociedad are in a much weaker position than Arsenal are over Eddie and Nketiah. But there's a difference. Mikel Merino is someone that if he stays at Real Sociedad, he's going to play. And if you deny him the move, is he going to feel as disgruntled as maybe Eddie and Nketiah, who feels like his career has hit a bit of a brick wall? Some would argue yes. I would argue no. I would argue that it's different. Also, when it comes to Mikel Merino, we know that Atletico Madrid are interested. We know that Barcelona have looked at him. So if it's only about getting a move away from Real Sociedad, there are options there for him. In Eddie and Nketiah's case, as far as we were aware, it was literally Marseille or nothing at the time. And so I think the two situations are no way comparable. If we take this on, in the piece, it says, Merino is intent on the move and manager Mikel Arteta has already been planning for different ways that he can use the Spanish international. The midfielder's tactical versatility allows a number of different configurations in midfield. There is consequently a confidence that it can happen, but Arsenal are anticipating long hours negotiating with Real Sociedad. In addition to another midfielder, Arsenal still want a wide forward who can play across the line. There is interest in Nico Williams, but that is now seen as virtually impossible due to the winger's desire to stay in Spain and also his willingness to remain at Athletic Bilbao for another season. The Basque club have rewarded him with the number 10 shirt this season as they attempt to ward off Barcelona interest. The Gunners have already signed Ricardo Calafiori this summer to boost their defensive options and made David Raya's loan a permanent deal. Their only major outgoings so far are Emil Smith-Rowe to Fulham and Karl Hein on loan to Real Valladolid, along with a host of released players, including Cedric Suarez and Mohamed El Neni. Okay, so the question is it time for Arsenal to just pay up, or are they right to dig their heels in this instance? And I want to get some of you guys' thoughts on this because the chat is popping off. I can see how many notifications are coming through. What have we got here? Let's take this back a little bit so I can find it. Hold on. Okay, let's go back to this one. St. Francis says, Harry, on top of us not willing to pay £7 million more, we hear that Vieira is injured again. This is after selling Emil Smith-Rowe with El Neni gone. More games this season as well. I sense an arrogance in us. I don't know that it's arrogance, but the reason I look at this maybe in a slightly different way to other people. Now, I've already said, right, that I wouldn't pay 8 million more than I want in this situation. Given there's still a couple of weeks left in the window, I don't think we're in a desperate place. And also, from what we were hearing last week, Mikel Merino is currently injured, so he's not going to come in and be, available for us on Saturday, for example. So, maybe that plays a part in this as well. Like how likely is it realistically that he's going to be available for the first 2-3 games? It's probably quite unlikely, and maybe that's why Arsenal don't feel this urgent need to bow to Real Sociedad's demands. But I really, really do believe that midfield is a position that we have to 100% address. We have to address it. We have to sort our midfield out. We have to get another player in there that is competent, that is trustworthy, that we can put in the biggest of games and know that he's not going to wilt. Yes, Ethan Nwaneri's come through and he looks great, but don't put too much pressure on the kid. He's a 17-year-old. Okay. Jorginho can't play every game. The likelihood of Thomas Partey playing every game is very low. So you wouldn't bank on that. Don't put too much pressure on Rice and Odegaard, because at times I was watching those guys last season. I know Odegaard missed a few more games, but I remember watching them and thinking, man, these guys are running on empty. And credit to them, they were able to kind of turn it around, find that second win of energy and go again. But the midfield for me is the most desperate need that we have going into the final couple of weeks of this window. And if we do not address the midfield area, I really do believe that we'll be left to regret it come the end of the 24-25 season. And that's why there's a part of me that does think, just go and pay the bloody money. 8 million more is a little bit too much for me to say is that simple and there's no excuse for not doing it. But if you can meet in the middle somewhere and then you're talking about 4 million difference, then for me, Arsenal have to do it. They have to do it. Ben says Arsenal are an embarrassment in the transfer market. I wouldn't go that far. Dr. Ken says, time for a Canton and Harry podcast. Seems you have a different opinion on the Nketiah transfer. We do have different opinions, and I'm well up for it. If Tom's about, in fact, I might send him a message once we finish and see if he's around a little bit later on, and maybe we can do something, because it is a good point. Nuances of Fate says it's probably something that gets done on the last day. 35 million is admittedly too much for a player in the last year of their contract. Sadiq says that the current gap is significant, but they should be able to meet in the middle of somewhere. D Mill says the power is in their hands. They've showed that they can let Merino go, but not Zubi, so they'll squeeze out more money. I actually think Zubimendi going would have made it harder for us to get Mikel Merino, because I think they would have gone, well, now we probably need to do 2 bits of business in the midfield, and we're going to need bigger money to pull that off. I know they would have got big money for Zubimendi, but I think they would have looked at both of them leaving and thought, this close to the season, if we're going to lose these 2 really important players, we probably need to be compensated to a much higher level than what is currently on the table. Halo Mateus says, what is the valuation of Mikel Merino in concrete numbers? The question of valuation is always an interesting one, in my opinion, because to be honest with you, I think that, you'll always get 2 valuations. You'll get the valuation of the selling club, and then you'll get the valuation of the buying club. And more often than not, the deal will be done at something in between. I always say, I've said it a million times over the last week, I feel like I'm a broken record, but the value is what another club is willing to pay, not what you think it is. Not what you think it is. I always say that. Matt G says this Merino deal is actually wild. We've gone from the deal will be announced any minute now to the clubs are 10 million apart. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? It is mad. John Daly says this signing will happen. The player wants it. He's got 1 season left on his contract. They're just trying to get some more money out of Arsenal. If the shoe was on the other foot, we would be trying to get more, obviously, as you can see, based on what we've been doing with Eddie and Nketiah. What else have we got? Popham says, this is a fine approach if no other teams come in and pay the 35 million euros, but it is a risk. So what you're saying is that there's a chance that maybe Barcelona or Atletico Madrid come in and say, well, here's the 35 million euros that you're asking for. Let's do this deal now. I think for Arsenal to be adopting this position, they obviously know that Mikel Merino wants them. And we've talked a lot recently about that, that it's quite clear actually that Arsenal are the front runners here, that Mikel Merino is someone that Mikel Arteta likes and I'm sure will have spoken to in some capacity. And Miguel Delaney's piece kind of backs that up, doesn't it? Where he says, and I'll just highlight the right bit, talks about the fee. And then it says here, I'll just highlight this on the screen for those of you that are watching. Merino is intent on the move, and manager Mikel Arteta has already been planning for different ways that he can use the Spanish international. So that basically says that, Merino is up for this. And so not only is another club going to have to come in and pay what Real Sociedad are asking, but they're also going to have to convince Mikel Merino that their club would be a better option for him than Arsenal. But if he's already convinced of Arsenal, there's quite a bit of work to do. So I think there's a lot that needs to happen for that to change. Sadiq says, Harry, I agree. A deal down the middle will be done. There will be a solution. Boston says, a deal like Declan, I can understand. They need to just pay up and move on. I think that people compare the Declan Rice thing. Like a lot of people say, when Arsenal want the player, they go out there and they pay the money. But Arsenal, I think, and it's not to dig out Tom, but I watched Tom's show this morning, and he said that Arsenal want to do business on their own terms. And I agree. Every club in the world wants to do business on their own terms. Everybody does. But is that realistic? Is that feasible all of the time? And the truth is, it's not. And in Declan Rice, there was a player there that Arsenal clearly wanted, clearly valued, clearly thought would be a game changer for them. And he was. And so they were probably willing to pay over what they would have liked to get the deal done. And I guarantee you that Arsenal, when they set out to sign Declan Rice, did not want to pay 100 million, north of 100 million. They did because they thought he was worth pushing themselves that little bit further to get that deal done. But that wasn't done on their terms. That was done on West Ham's terms. 100 million quid for Declan Rice. That's West Ham that have dictated that price, not Arsenal. Arsenal wouldn't have sat in a room in the lead up to that deal and saying, well, we value this guy at 100 million pounds. So, if we go that far, then that's fine. No, it would have been, let's see what it's going to take. And, as they spoke to him and got to know him a little bit better and understand how good he was and what he was going to bring, they went, well, it's not ideal, but we really want this player. We're dead set on him. I'm willing to sanction going that little bit further to make that happen. So I think it's different. I do. Let me just straighten these books up before they fall on my head. That's not. Let's go back into the live chat. Matt says, I think the club are right to hold out if it doesn't impact on future targets. If it's a choice between paying 8 million and getting it down now so we can also get a forward, then I'm doing that. Interesting. I don't think it will impact Arsenal's ability to get a forward, but I am starting to doubt whether they are going to move for a forward, which, look, in an ideal world, I want both. I want a midfielder and I want a forward. But if I could only have one, then I want the midfielder because I feel like that is the greater need. So if I have to slightly overspend on the midfielder and then maybe have to cut back a little bit in terms of what I can do on the attacker, I'm okay with us prioritizing that position over the other. I think that's important. Steve says, can't have it all ways. We pay too much and sell too low. Same people now shouting because we are standing firm. I think the bigger clubs will always be in a situation where they pay too much for players. And the bigger clubs will always be in a position where sometimes they have to sell for lower because invariably they've overpaid for a player. Therefore, that makes the price that they sell them for in sort of relation to that as lower. So let me give you an example to clarify what I'm saying here. So I think that when Arsenal knock on a door or Arsenal pick up the phone and enter the negotiations for a player, Arsenal will always be quoted a bigger price than Fulham will, than Crystal Palace will, than Tottenham will, because Arsenal are a bigger football club. And the bigger the football club, the bigger the finances, the more you're expected to kind of appease the selling club, right? So you're always going to overpay slightly. When it comes to selling, what determines what the right price is to sell? Now, let's take Fabio Vieira, for example, okay? We overpaid for Fabio Vieira because we're Arsenal. I guarantee you, had Bournemouth gone in to sign Fabio Vieira, they would have been quoted less by FC Porto. We're Arsenal, so we overpaid. Now, if we come to sell Fabio Vieira and we sold him for £15 million, everybody would say that we've sold him too cheap. Why? Because we paid 35 to bring him in. But we only paid 35 because we're Arsenal. But unless we're selling to a club of that similar ilk, then we are going to get less money because the capability of the club that you're selling to is less financially. And therefore, that plays a part. And that's the bit that I think people don't always, I'm not going to say they don't understand. I think they do understand. I just don't think that it's always taken into account. Lots and lots and lots of comments coming through. Guys, if you've got any questions as well, start putting them in the chat box and we'll work our way through them as well throughout what remains of the show. I'm going to take a really, really brief pause and then we're going to dive straight back into the chat. We can do another 10, 15 minutes, no problem. So keep your comments and thoughts coming. Should Arsenal just pay up and get it done with Mikel Merino? Are Real Sociedad asking too much? Do you think this is going to happen between now and the end of the window? And at what price point? Let me know in the live chat and we'll be back after a really, really brief pause. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner pod.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
Make sure you leave a like on the video if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're live on YouTube right now, just move your cursor and click that like button just at the bottom of the video window. It really, really does help. There's so many of you watching us live right now, but somehow we've only got 89 likes on the board. Guys, I want to get to 500 likes on every video. It's so important that the likes are on the board for the algorithm and all that great stuff. Also, subscribe if you're new to the channel. That really, really does help. Make sure as well that you have checked out some of the content that is linked in the description below. For Patreons, there is an episode out for you today. It's out now. The link is in the description below. Go and take a peek at it. Have a listen to it. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I really enjoyed making it and putting it together. It was a piece that I call In Focus, which was looking at Gabriel Martinelli, because of course it's fair to say that he didn't have the greatest of seasons last season. He set the bar really, really high, didn't he, the season before? And so I wanted to talk about why he is at the point that he is, how he gets back to his brilliant best and all the rest of it. So yeah, do check it out. You can become a patron of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast by, of course, clicking on the link below. Now, remember that our Patreon page is open for free. All the content that we're making up until the end of August over on Patreon will be accessible to our free members on the platform as well. And you can see the In Focus Gabriel Martinelli piece is out now, dropped 38 minutes ago. Now, what that means is you can sign up for free on Patreon and you can access this for now. But come the end of August, it wouldn't be fair on those that are contributing for us to make everything open. So if you're signing up for free now, do that, check it out, see what you think. And come the end of August, if you like the content, if you feel like it's worthy of your support, if you feel like you want to help me on the journey to growing this pod even more and growing this community, then please do sign up. But as I say, you can access it now by creating a free membership on the Patreon website. So do check that out. Okay, let's get back into the chat box. What are you guys saying on here? Just scrolling through, just trying to pick up some comments related to what we've been talking about. Edwell says Arsenal must also concentrate on Gyökeres whilst waiting for Merino. That will eat away our time. Wrap the Gyökeres deal up first, Arsenal. I think Arsenal are more than capable of negotiating on multiple fronts simultaneously. So I don't think the fact that we're negotiating for Merino means that we can't negotiate on the forward front, is the point I'm trying to make. On Gyökeres, I like him, but it would be a big old signing, wouldn't it? And I just don't know that Arsenal are going to go that far in the market between now and the end of this window. That's my hunch and opinion. I don't know that. There was a lot of talk the other day that Edu had said to some fans, like, don't worry, by the end of the window, you won't be disappointed. Whether that ends up being something like a Gyökeres signing and that's what appeases everybody, I don't know. But right now, I'm not hopeful of a sort of 100 million euro type deal, if that makes sense. If the price is significantly lower, maybe, but who knows? Right, let's continue. through the chat. Ben says, looking forward to seeing us run Saka into the ground and end the season with Havertz and Jorginho in midfield. A nice positive way to start the season. James Bond, not the James Bond, not 007. James Bond in our chat says Atletico Madrid verbally agreed to pay the fee for Merino, but he wants Arsenal, so they went for Gallagher. That deal with Chelsea has fallen through, so it's possible that Atletico Madrid could return for Merino. Well, in that case, and I don't know that what James is saying is definitely going to happen. I'm not discrediting James in any way, but I know that the Conor Gallagher thing has hit a bit of a brick wall, and he's been asked to travel back, which is wild, isn't it? He went over there, took all these photos, and now he's going to come back. I know that that there's a chance that deal falls through. And if Atletico have indicated that they're verbally willing to pay 35 million euros, then that is enough for Real Sociedad to go, okay, we're going to hold out for that. And if Arsenal, come in and make that same offer, same bid, then there's a conversation to be had, isn't there, between Mikel Merino and his people? Like, where do I go? Do I go Arsenal? Do I go Atletico Madrid? And you'd like to think that he'd choose us because we've already done the groundwork. And, that sort of conversation with Mikel Arteta, we think has already taken place. And if everybody keeps telling us that he wants us above everybody else, then why wouldn't he choose us in that scenario? But yeah, a lot of the time when you're talking about transfers, there is a domino effect, isn't there? And the Conor Gallagher thing feels like it could have some sort of impact on what we manage with Mikel Merino. Let's take a couple more of your comments. Mark Jerome says, our transfer dealings are shocking. Over the last 3 years, including this window so far, we spent 498 million and received a paltry 56 million pound. There lies the problem. I do think, Mark, that a lot of that in terms of the money that we've brought in has been because we've just managed the club badly for so many years before that we've almost still been paying the price for that. That brings me on to the topic of Edu. I do want to talk about Edu, right? Because I think that Edu gets a rough ride from some fans. Do I agree with every single decision that Edu makes? Do I agree with everything he's done since he's come in at the club? No, not every single individual thing. But it is impossible to deny that Edu has done a good job and has been a big part in why Arsenal are where they are today, competing for the Premier League title, which a decade ago felt like we were a million miles away from. You can't deny that Edu overall and Arteta as a kind of pairing have been very, very good for this football club. Along the way, have there been things that they've both done that I've looked at and gone, I don't necessarily agree with that in isolation? Yeah, of course. I don't think any manager in the world would always satisfy every single fan. Like, there will be decisions that Alex Ferguson made at Manchester United that United fans at the time would have questioned. There are decisions that Pep Guardiola makes that Manchester City fans look at and go, what the hell is that? Like, for example, when he went into a Champions League final, played without a DM or whatever he'd done and got them essentially beaten by Chelsea. Every manager, every sporting director will do things that you as an individual and me as an individual won't agree with. But that's why when you're assessing how good or bad these people are for your football club, you have to zoom out. You have to zoom out and you have to look at it more broadly and more widely. And I would say that looking at it more broadly and looking at it more widely, both of those guys have been very, very good for Arsenal. And my books are going to fall down and hit me on the head again. This is supposed to be like a weight thing. It's not very good, is it? But I would say that both of those have done really, really good work at Arsenal Football Club. And look, the other day I sat here and I said I disagreed with what they did with the Eddie Nketiah situation and that I would have done the deal and all of that. So I can disagree with them, but I think it's way too far when people go, Eddie's crap. Like, I saw a tweet and I don't want to name the person, right? Because I actually know the person. And I don't want to out someone and end up with people highlighting it and maybe going after them and criticizing them, because I don't think that's right online. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But this particular individual has put out some ridiculous tweets, X-posts, whatever you call them nowadays online. On the 13th of August, he said, "Morning, Arsenal. Sack the worst football director in the world. Thanks." yesterday. Has Edu been sacked yet? Asking for a friend. What is that? What is that? Like, we are, in a lot of people's eyes, the favourites to win the Premier League this year. That's because the club have been making progress year upon year after the last few years with Edu and with Arteta at the helm. You don't have to agree with every single decision, but give them their flowers for the work that they have done. Tom says, Harry, sometimes I wonder why Arteta and Edu have hardly signed attackers when compared to how many windows both have been in their respective positions. Would like Arsenal to sign some attackers. So I agree with that in the sense of the number of defenders that we've brought in has been really disproportionate to the number of attackers. But I think there's a couple of reasons for that, which I'll try and share. And you can tell me if you agree or disagree, of course. First of all, I think when Mikel Arteta came in, attackers-wise, in terms of that centre forward, we had Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who at the time was producing a lot. Single-handedly, I would argue, won us that FA Cup with his goals in the semi-final and the final. Did brilliantly. We had a top striker when Mikel Arteta came in. Not only did we have a top striker in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but we had Alexander Lacazette at the club as well. Another good level forward, not on Aubameyang's level in terms of outputs, nowhere near, but we had two good centre forwards. We had Saka coming through. We just spent £72 million on Nicolas Pepe. And I think Mikel Arteta would have looked at it and thought the real problem in this team is at the back end of the pitch. And so I need to address that first. So naturally, that's what we went to fix first and foremost. Over time, we have ended up with injuries in those defensive positions. Jurriën Timber was signed. We ended up losing him for an entire season. You look at Tomiyasu, who was also brought in by the Arteta Edu regime, who's constantly been in and out when it comes to fitness, and they probably worry about that. We brought Zinchenko in as a left back, so that was one that needed to be done. Gabriel, etc. Calafiori's coming now. I get you. Like, we have signed more defenders than attackers, but you've also got to think about what Arteta inherited and why that has been the case. Now, Bukayo Saka's come through and been incredible as an attacker, which has reduced our need to go out and bring in that right wing option. Gabriel Martinelli has done really, really well over the last few years. Okay, the last season wasn't as good as the one prior, but he obviously looks at him and thinks, I trust you and I think you can be a big part. He did sign Jesus. He did sign Kai Havertz. And he did sign Leandro Trossard. So he has brought in attacking players. It's not, I don't want to bring in attackers. I think he's just addressing what he believes are the main needs of the squad. And I think because when he came in, we were better stocked in the attacking department than we were defensively. You're going to compare Aubameyang to Mustafi in terms of what Arteta inherited. Like, you can't. So I think that's a lot to do with it. I really, really do. Let me take a few more of your questions and thoughts before I say my goodbyes. What else have we got? Popham says we're still missing a moments player to get us over the line in the high pressure games towards the end of the season. I think we could do with more moments players, but I certainly think Leandro Trossard was that last season. I thought he was excellent, really, really excellent. I know people always refer to that chance against Villa, but overall he just made a really valuable contribution, I would say. So yeah, what else have we got? Sadiq says some of our fans are clueless. They criticize Edu based on the players they want, and we are not able to sign. I only care about Arteta getting the players he wants. Obviously, as a supporter, I can dream about potential signings, but I would never criticize the club harshly based on what I want. I think you can criticize the club. Like, make no mistake about it. If we end this window with only Ricardo Calafiori, I will criticize the club. And I will say that there was an opportunity this summer not to do big surgery on the squad because we didn't need to, because we were in a really good position. But there was an opportunity to add a couple of pieces that would have made us as close to bulletproof as a football team can possibly be in the most competitive league in the world. So I will be critical if we don't end up bringing in the midfielder that we need, and probably a little bit if we don't bring in an attacker as well, but more so with the midfielder thing, because I think there's a much greater and urgent need there. You can criticize, that's fine. But I also think that because of the work they've done over the last few years, we kind of need to cut them some slack. And people will say you've been saying that for years. And I have, because I think that in previous years, we were needing to make sales. Those sales weren't forthcoming. And we ended up in the end having to, find different ways of financing things to get players in, because the players that we hoped were going to help us raise some of those funds were just not being picked up by anyone. And I just think like sometimes there's a value in getting people in the door early. And I think we've seen that ourselves in the last couple of years. Get them in nice and early, give them preseason with the group, let them get accustomed, and you will see them hit the ground running. And this year's been harder to do that because of the international tournaments. But I also think we've not been as proactive, at least as far as we're aware. And we don't know what's been happening behind the scenes. Maybe Arsenal tried for 5-6 players and couldn't get any of them. But it doesn't feel like, at least, that we've been as proactive as we have been in recent years. And at the point where we're almost there, and at the point where this could be the tipping point in terms of us toppling City and becoming the force in English football, you can understand why people are desperate to see us do everything within our power to try and get there. And if we don't do that this summer, then it's going to be frustrating. And I will be critical. I'm saying it. But there's also a part of me that doesn't want to be majorly critical, rip into everybody and anybody involved, only for Arsenal to do 2 bits of business in the next couple of weeks and put us in a really strong position to go on and win the league. So that's where I am. It's not like in previous years where I looked at it and I went, it's coming towards the end of the window. We haven't done anything yet. And I've got no faith in these guys to do anything. I do have faith in this lot. So I'm in the position of, it's not prove to me that you are doing the right things. It's actually, I need proof that you're not doing the right things before I can go off on one about it. Do you know what I mean? It's a different way of looking at it. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I was planning to do 20 minutes today, and we've done 47. Thank you so much for your support. As always, if I could just ask you on the way out to leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. Guys, we've only got 140 likes on the board. Come on, that's nowhere near where we need to be, considering how many of you have been watching as well. If you're listening on audio, please do leave us a review. It really does help. Subscribe on whichever platform it is you prefer. Remember, for our Patreons, there is an episode out now. In focus, Gabriel Martinelli, over on the Patreon page. Sign up. Even free members can access it for now, to get a taste of what we're doing over there. Let me know your thoughts on it. Any feedback is very much appreciated. And I will see you all on the next episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner. That will be tomorrow, unless something comes up, unless there's some breaking news worthwhile discussing, in which case I'm working at home today, so I'll hop on. But if nothing happens, if nothing major develops or changes, then I'll see you all on Thursday with another edition. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.